Okay, been not too busy on the Cyclekart front of late because basically I've been doing other things around the house. So, development. It's a bit tight and squashed, as you can see here in Chez Moi Garage, to give it a pretentious name. Just zoom out a bit there. Nope, ain't letting me. Okay, just mocking things up. So I'm creating things in wood. Putting bearings where I think they're going to need to be. I've started doing a little bit of fab on the steel work for the front end. Working out measurements and where things are going to sit. So here are my thoughts so far. If you look at the tape measure there, I've got that about front, well, virtual front axle, because it doesn't have an axle. It'll be an axle line at the front of the tape measure there. You can see I've laid this out so it's nowhere near representative of the length of the Cyclekart. If we can focus in on that, 3 feet. So it's not even a metre long. The whole thing, axle to axle, I'm going to go 1800 because I'm a tall fella, and that's basically as long as we can make them without a good reason in front of the committee. So we shouldn't go more than 1800 axle to axle for the wheelbase. So what I've done is I've just sat the engine in place and I've played around with ride heights. I'm trying to achieve it, so this is you won't be able to see very well, that clamp will be in the way. It definitely is. I can remove it, it's not doing anything, he says. That will be at about full bounce height. Well, that axle, it'll be actually a little lower down when the springs are in. The spring will sit, I'm going to get a lever welded on there. This is obviously going to be steel. Make a support there for the rubber cone to sit. About there, from the experiments I've done with rubber cones, I reckon about 3-inch centre to centre. So that lever is going to give me about the bounce I need, but we'll figure that one out as we go along. I'm going to make it so we can move it backwards and forwards to tune the suspension slightly, and maybe make it so I can move it up and down so I can get the preload right. For the rebound, I'm going to put a couple of bobbins on with an elastic band, well, a big fat rubber band underneath, so that the suspension doesn't drop all the way down on the spring. We'll look at damping after we've got that far. If it needs it, then we'll put it on. So a little bit of grinding. Move those out of the way. Made a little front frame there, ready to get welded up when I get access to welding kit again, which will be in a few weeks' time now. And that'll eventually be part of the front end. I think I only need to have it leaning back a little less than the angle we've got there, because that's throwing about, on the end there, nearly 12 degrees of caster, which is probably excessive. So we'll lose a little bit of angle there on the front frame, and I can always pack bearings if I have to, but hopefully I won't have to. So the engine location, because the virtual axle is going to be sat as if the bearings were on top of the frame, I can put the bearings on top of the frame at the rear end and have the framework, however I choose to do it, lower than axle height, dropping the centre of gravity, which is nice. The engine, as I have got it sat there, It's obviously mid-engined, which is what the original was, and I've got plenty of room for that provided I can get my feet forward at the front end. You can see that the tape measure measured 900, so that's got another 900 to go backwards, so it'll be off the end of there by quite some margin. I can drop that engine even lower than the position it's in there, again lowering the centre of gravity of the whole cart, which again is advantageous. Keeping the centre of gravity low is what we tend to do. The biggest thing is making sure that you get your seat low enough to keep a low centre of gravity, which I can do also. Something I couldn't manage to do on the three-wheeler, and yeah, I think handling will improve with that from the other cycle carts that I've driven. The axle, peerless diff, still a little bit of work to do on it to get keys in the right places and everything in the right spot. I have to make a frame for the rear end. Bits of me are contemplating suspending it, but other bits of me are thinking keep it simple. I think the simplicity will probably win out at the end. You can see that the engine's slightly out the centre there, but then again so is the diff. The main body of the engine, believe it or not, is not too far off central, but a little bit. I think all in all, I don't think that's going to make an awful lot of difference having a little bit more weight one side than the other. It's going to be fractional, whatever it is. By the time I've got everything else in place, I'm sure that they will be fairly even on the rear wheels. So that's where I am with it so far. Oh, a few more things. Yeah, Stouff clamps, I think they're called, do get a good grip. We've got this thing now. I haven't cut this down yet, and that'll have a cut in it there. That'll have the lever on. But I was considering using this, having talked to a few people, and maybe for when we're on tarmac or concrete, linking the top two anti-roll bars together by tightening all of them screws up, and it would act as an anti-roll bar, maybe. And then if we were on more bumpy ground, unlinking them, and that then would give you more independent suspension, which could be an advantage on grass. So those are my thoughts pretty much so far. Still not convinced about the front end going to work first shot, but I reckon I can get it to work with a few more shots, so we'll see.